Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the testing in the Common Core system. Now, the federal legislation, the Every Student Succeeds Act, mandates that our children get state assessments every year through the grade school and middle school years, and then at the high school level again. And then federal legislation says that the tests must be valid and reliable. Those words actually mean something. Valid means I test what I say I'm testing and nothing else. And reliable means if I give the same test 4 times, I'm going to get the same result. I can count on it. A bathroom scale is a good example of that. Every day I step on my bathroom scale. I love my bathroom scale. It says I weigh 105. It's my favorite scale on the planet. It is very reliable. It says I weigh 105 every single day. And then I go to the doctor's and I step on that awful scale in the doctor's office and it doesn't say 105. It says another number, which I'm actually not going to share with you. My bathroom scale is reliable. It says the same number every day. It's not valid. The number wasn't accurate. So you can be valid or reliable or both or neither. We've all been on the bathroom scale the day that the battery died and you step on it and all of a sudden you weigh 200 pounds more than you weighed the day before because something was broken in the scale. Now the scale isn't reliable either. So keeping those concepts in mind, let's move that to education. The legislation from the federal government mandates that these assessments be valid and reliable, and we use them to determine whether kids move forward or into remediation. We use them to evaluate teachers. In some states, we use them to determine whether or not teachers can even keep their jobs. So are the tests valid and reliable? They aren't. The first problem is the children themselves. In any given large population of children who come in to take the test, you don't know if that particular child had breakfast that morning. Maybe they're coming down with an illness that nobody has diagnosed yet. You know, the first day you're getting a cold and you kind of feel like you're walking through mud, but you started the day feeling pretty good, and by the afternoon you feel like you want to just go crawl in a corner somewhere. Some children are like that. Maybe there was an upheaval at home. Their dog died, a relative died. Maybe there was a fire up the street and they didn't get any sleep the night before. In any given population of children, about 10% are going to have one of those extraneous factors. That means you're not actually testing academics. What you're measuring is the fact that their dog died last night. However, as the socioeconomic level of the children goes down, the incidence of that extra factor goes up, because children who live in poverty are more likely to not have had breakfast or a good night's sleep, or have upheaval in their family, or have an undiagnosed illness. In fact, the New York State Department of Education took the test results and put them right beside the socioeconomic levels of the schools, and what they found was that they matched. So these tests, they're not measuring academics, they're measuring poverty, and then they're punishing children for being poor. Who thought that was a good idea? The tests themselves have problems. We have what are called constructed response assessments. So the child takes a math test and then they have to write about why they got that answer. That makes that not a math assessment, it makes it a writing assessment, but we called it math. And they go into math remediation, but we didn't test math. How does that affect children? If you ask a little girl to write you an essay, she will tell you everything that she knows about the subject, beginning with what she had for breakfast that morning. If you ask a little boy, especially one who's good in math, to write why he did the math the way he wrote it, he'll write because that's the way it worked. And what he won't write but is thinking is, you dummy. Because little boys tend to be less verbal at particularly young ages than little girls. There are children who have learning disabilities. Now, learning disabilities often either are numeric or they're linguistic. A child who has numeric disabilities will not do well in the math assessment, on the math part. But a child who has linguistic disabilities may very well do very well on the math assessment, except they can't write about it because they have linguistic disabilities. But we're going to put them in math remediation because we just made the math test a writing test. Who else does it affect? It affects children from lower socioeconomic backgrounds because children who come from those backgrounds often have more delayed ability to communicate in standard English, even though they can do the math. But because we made the math test a writing test, we're going to put them in math remediation, but we weren't really testing math. So the test isn't valid because it's not measuring what we said we would measure. And then we move to the scoring. The scoring in these assessments is completely subjective. Did you ever watch the Olympics and you watch gymnastics or figure skating and 9 judges watch the same athlete do the same routine at the same time and give it 9 different scores? Which one is right? See, subjective scoring, by definition, is not valid because it's somebody's opinion. And yet we are basing the future of our children on somebody's opinion about how well they did. And who are these somebodies? Well, they advertise on places like Craigslist for the people who score these assessments. And they don't have to have a degree in education. And they have to score a certain number of tests per hour to be cost effective. Who thought this was a good idea? We are tying the future of our children to assessments that are not valid and not reliable at any level. We can and we must do better than this. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the data collection in education. See you then.